So second week back that the driving tests have been opened up to the general public, and it's a bit of a mess. Now, there are a lot of angry people out there, and I believe rightly so. Things shouldn't be as bad as they are, or as badly managed as they are. The communications, I'll get a few screenshots of their Twitter and Facebook or social media posts, I would say are inflammatory maybe, and are rubbing people up the wrong way. You've got people whose theory test certificates are running out, who can't book a test. You've got people that have been waiting since before lockdown. Everybody that had a test put on hold over lockdown, they've still not been they've still not all been invited back to book another test. So that shouldn't be happening. And I'm sure there's reasons for it, for some of it. But again, those people are really angry. They now can't get a test. So to put some context into it and give some information about what the DVSA are doing. So what they're doing is they are at the moment only releasing 6 weeks of tests at a time. So as you can imagine, as of today, so we're Wednesday the 2nd, yesterday the 1st of September was the second day that they'd released driving tests again, but they've all been booked, all bar a very few, which they then said they're going to hold into next week's release. So they're saying they're releasing 6 weeks of tests at a time. In reality, it's a week at a time at the moment. And most driving test centres are running at a severely reduced capacity. So my local test centre, I worked out the other day, is just over 50% of what it was before. So there have been times where you get a wait at our test centre of anywhere above of 12 weeks. So this could get really, really interesting and really, really delayed. I think personally the situation is being handled very poorly by the DVSA. The situation is what it is. They have come up with some guidelines and there's some things they're working to, so they're not sending out as many tests at once. The examiners are doing all of this, the extra cleaning of the car and what have you. That's fine. If that's what they're choosing to do to keep people safe, then that's what they need to do. But the handling of the situation is terrible. Not really, really terrible, and is not very customer focused, I would say, is probably it, to put a bit of sort of spiel on it. Not very customer focused at all. Now, at a time they've released about like 35,000 tests at a time, and there are horrendous queues. Some people talking north of 100,000 people in a queue to book a driving test. Now, those numbers are going to be no different regardless of how the DVSA released the tests, because at the minute they don't have the capacity. It's the same as it has been with everything else. So all the online shopping that you've been doing has been taking longer to get to you because capacity is reduced. Now, they've not got as many people working, so they can't work as closely together, they can't work as quickly, they can't work as well. So things have to take a little bit longer, and that's what's happening with the driving tests. And as frustrating as that is, with everyone saying we are in the middle of a pandemic and everything, we can't expect everything to go back to normal straight away, to fully normal as it was a few months ago, 6 months ago. That said, as I mentioned earlier, the social media posts are nothing short of just winding up the general public at the minute and infuriating a lot of driving instructors. There is talk, the DVSA have said from the 14th of September. So next week on the 7th, they will release another week's worth of tests to make it up to the 6 weeks. And then after that, the 14th of September, they are going to release another, they've said until like January time. I'll get the exact dates. I believe it's the end of January. So somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks worth of tests all in one go to try and clear this backlog. It's somewhere in the region of 395,000 test slots. Well, we can see from a queue of 100,000 there's potential that a third of those tests are going to get taken straight away. And anybody who hasn't already passed a theory test could be waiting a long time into next year to get a test by the time they've then passed their theory. Now, I don't know how they make the situation better, the actual situation of test availability. From what I've seen at my local test centre, I think maybe more than one, they're only sending one test out at a time. They could do things differently. They could send more than one out at a time. They could send two out at a time. There's enough space in the car park, and if they're concerned at the end of a test about the car park being too crowded, well, they could either stop at the side of the road outside the test centre and give the feedback, or just make the pupil park in the examiner parking area, so then people are still spaced out enough. Now, that would then make capacity better. So it wouldn't it wouldn't put everything back to normal. It could get it very close if they continue with the staggered 20-minute appointment times, and they send out double the people in each appointment time. Would certainly make things, well, pretty much back to normal. But I think they need to start, there needs to be something done about it. There are a lot of very, very angry people. That said, what can we do? What should you be doing about booking a test? So currently, and this advice has never changed, you don't book a test just to have a go at it. It's infuriating, because if you're just going to have a go because you think you might do okay, well, there's a larger possibility that you won't do okay, and you'll be like, oh, I failed because the examiner was really horrible. Well, no, you failed because you weren't ready. And we'll get one thing clear from the get-go here: examiners don't fail you, your actions fail you. They just write it down on a piece of paper, or in this case now, they tick a box on the iPad. And that might seem harsh, but it's always something you could have done differently. Oh, this car pulled out in front of me. Well, the examiner would be thinking, well, what should they have done differently, and could they have done anything differently? And if there was, and you should have seen it, then that's why you failed. You can't blame other people for what you're doing behind the wheel. What would have happened if the examiner hadn't been there to stop you, if they stopped you? Or what would have happened if they hadn't told you? Like, what would happen if they let you go out on the road and you keep making those mistakes? Will you have an accident? And it's not worth it. So only book a test. Only book a test when you know, if you've got a driving instructor, they don't have to tell you anything other than where you're going. So left, right, ahead, whatever. That's all they should be telling you. You shouldn't be telling you, okay, your gear's wrong, or okay, so we need to slow down, or you haven't done your mirrors, you haven't put an indicator on. If you're not doing those things unaided, entirely unaided, because that's what you'll be on your test. Because if they have to aid you, then you'll fail. Then you shouldn't be taking your test. You shouldn't be booking a test. And now, I understand why people are going, well, if I can get one, I'm just going to get one and try my best and try and have a go. It's kind of like the toilet roll situation was at the beginning of lockdown. It's kind of, the more people are taking, the more people are taking them, the more people are going out behind them and then taking again, and that's why we're running out, and why people that are ready for a test then can't get one. So we need to be sensible about it, make sure we're doing the right things and booking at the right time. If your instructor has said to you you're not ready, then go with you're not ready. With the greatest respect to people's parents, a lot of people go, oh, my dad says I'm fine, I should be fine. But right, you're paying a driving instructor for their professional opinion, and 99% of us are there to help you through. Yes, it's our business, and yes, we make money off it, but we're not gonna I certainly wouldn't, and I don't know another instructor that would say, well, I'm just going to keep giving them lessons because then that way I can make more money off of them. We make far more money out of people passing their tests, telling their friends, giving us good reviews, and then we get more business through word of mouth and we take on more people. You don't want to just keep the same 20 people or 30 people, however many you've got. Don't keep them same 30 people all the time. More will come. People turn 17 every day. People decide they want to learn to drive every day. So the fact that you think driving instructors are just trying to make more money out of you, if that is genuinely the case, then ditch them and go to someone else. But if you get the same opinion, or go and get a second opinion from another driving instructor, if you get a second opinion and the other driving instructor says to you, well, yeah, we've got another 6 weeks work to do here at least, or whatever, you're getting the same message twice. But back to the topic of how this whole driving testing has been handled. I honestly do think that maybe trained animals could have done better with their, maybe even untrained animals or children, toddlers, given access to the DVSA social media, could have done a better job of communicating with the public. Some of the tweets and Facebook posts and stuff have been just saying more than 50% of tests fail when they go out. Make sure you're ready, only book a test when you're ready. And it comes across as really condescending rather than being I'm hoping the intention is to say to people, look, lots of people fail their driving test because they book them when they're not ready. Please only book when you're not ready. You can't get that emotion across on a written message, so people take it quite a bad way. And then another one will come out saying, right, within an hour or two, saying something along the lines of, if you're going to take your driving test, your preferred test centre might not be available. Check for other local areas, other local test centres. There may be availability there. And then underneath it, it will say something along the lines of, if you're ready to take your driving test, you should be able to take your test in any area, at any day, at any time. And whilst, yes, the theory behind that is true, there are things that as a learner and a novice driver, you're going to need to have seen before you take your test. Around by where I live, there's two roundabouts that are very, very close together, and you have to go around them in a very specific way, and the lane selection might not be quite as you'd imagine it if you don't know them, and then you can end up in the wrong place and you can end up failing because you don't know that, and you need to have seen it. And that's going to be the same anywhere you go. There's going to be something somewhere. There's going to be a horrible junction, there's going to be a tricky roundabout, there's going to be I don't know, it could be anything. A junction you can't see out of properly, or a road that all of a sudden there's a very sharp bend that doesn't look like it's coming. All those sorts of things could cause you more problems, and I think for them to be so blasé is to just say, well, you should be fine, go anywhere, isn't helping people. And also some people, the nearest driving test centre could be an hour away, so there isn't another local option, or their local option, or the other options around them still aren't open. There's still a few test centres that aren't open. So they certainly could do things better and handle the public relations side of things better. That said as well, like I said earlier, as the public, we need to not panic buy driving tests like we did toilet rolls, otherwise we'll have none left, and people will be taking them that don't need them. People didn't need all those toilet rolls when they bought them, like all the food that people panic bought that ended up in the bins. So that's what's going to be driving tests. There's going to be loads of driving tests in the bin, because there are going to be people that take them, haven't got a driving instructor, have never driven, or maybe looking to do a license exchange and think it's just going to be absolutely fine, and don't know difficulties that there might be of a UK driving test compared to maybe where they learned to drive before, because standards are different across the world. So there are lots and lots of potential, and I understand people want to drive, the freedom and the almost like a rite of passage as people see it as, but be sensible about it. If you've never had a driving lesson, if you've never, having a driving assessment from a driving instructor could be, if you're learning with mum and dad, could be a very well spent somewhere around £60 to get your driving assessed. Can you do everything that you need to do, and can you do it properly? Because then that way you know whether your driving test potentially is going to be worth booking and worth doing. As things get better and as things go back to more normality, more driving tests will become available, I am sure, because they will start sending out more than however, like I say, at my test centre, one at a time, my local test centre, they're sending out one at a time. If that goes to 2 or 3 at a time again, then we're in a much better situation. But that's going to take some time. Also, what should you do if you're learning to drive right now? So you're learning to drive, you just started after lockdown, and now you're hearing, well, I can't get a theory test now till middle of October, and then after that it could be weeks and weeks till I get a driving test anyway, so I could be finished, I could be ready. It could be in the new year before I could get a driving test, and I'll be test standard by then. What should I do? Do I stop? The decision I've come to after talking to my students is what we're going to do with them. So we're going to get everyone carrying on as normal. If a driving test comes available that they can do in a time frame that works for us and works for them, then we'll carry on, we'll do the test, and everything will carry on as normal. What we're going to do though, if people get to test standard and they can't get a test for a couple of months, what we'll do is we'll just stop. We'll get test standard, we'll stop. Now, my experience when we came back from lockdown after not driving for somewhere in the region of 4 months, most people were absolutely fine and regained their standard very quickly, and some didn't even drop anything. So I'm not concerned about getting people to test standard and then them contacting me and saying, right, after the agreement is that they have to tell me with sort of 3 to 4 weeks notice, I have a driving test in 3 or 4 weeks time. Then we prioritise them over the learners that are either still very early stages or the learners that haven't got a test booked. Get them in, polish up again, and then get them through to their test. That allows everybody to keep learning. It allows them to not spend needless money on a driving test. It allows them to not spend money needlessly on driving lessons. So they're not spending money for an extra 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks on driving lessons just to keep them topped up. It allows them to have that financial break, and then they can come back, or they could choose to take the test in their own car if they wanted to. Once you can drive, you can drive. And any car should be fine to drive it, take your test in. Then allows people that are out there looking to learn to drive to continue learning or start learning, rather than just having a diary full of, for me, having a diary full of people that can drive and I'm just being ferried around all day for no reason. People have been floating ideas of, well, why can't they get driving instructors to do some driving tests? It's just not going to happen. It's up for so much abuse. People will kick the backside out of it, to put no finer point on it. The abuse that it's open to, of a test pass being sold to somebody for, right, okay, you give me £300, I'll do a test pass, a pass certificate. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And yeah, so after that, other than that, it's always going to be driving examiners. It's going to be somebody independent. It wouldn't even be that you could test other people's students. Again, it wouldn't work with the diary and the workload that most of us driving instructors have got. You wouldn't have the time to do it. And letting a learner driver drive on their own just because they think they should be able to, is again not going to happen. you have to be assessed. Some people are saying, why don't we just let those that are competent drive? Again, open for abuse. It's not going to happen. You wouldn't let a pilot loose on a plane if they said, well, yeah, I'm still learning, but I'm honestly, I'm all right. He says I'm fine. You'd want them to be of a decent standard. So that's my kind of viewpoint on it. We have got to a situation that is not great, but it is what it is. We can't. The situation isn't going to change. For me, it's the handling of it. The DVSA have really not helped themselves, and the public, their interaction with the public has been terrible. Okay, so that just wraps that up from me. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you again soon.